In a previous audio, I stated my position in regards to people who don't have enough basic education and how they should navigate their way through life. Well, I'm not going to leave the degreed people out. You guys are now off the hook. There are different levels of intelligence, and in a later audio, I'm going into detail. Last time I checked, there were 8 different types of intelligence. And you hear a lot of things in the news. The buzz is about emotional intelligence, and that is one of them. But there's also another thing called practical intelligence. You ever heard the phrase that someone is an educated fool? Well, you're listening to someone who used to be one. And these things aren't intentional. You know, people of color back in the day were denied education for so long that when some of us did get it, it became a pressing issue in a lot of families, and it still is in a lot of families. I was born and raised in the Deep South, so there's a huge emphasis on education because, you know, the Deep South received the brunt of a lot of the segregation back in the day. But the thing is that, you know, we have produced a group of people that was so educated that they don't have any common sense. And I was one of them for a while until I had to get out in the world and realize there weren't people that were like me. You know, I had a sheltered life. It was a privileged one, but it was a sheltered one nonetheless. And I had a lot of advantages, you know, thank goodness for that. You know, my parents did the best they could, and I come from a family of a lot of educated people. Some of them, you know, blue collar, still educated, you know, and that's a good thing. However, sometimes, you know, you don't teach the practical things of how to navigate in the world, and most of the time, the people that are supposed to teach you, they weren't exposed to those things, so I don't blame them. You know, people teach you things based on what they're exposed to. When I went back to college, it was just so funny because, you know, I was really concerned about being an older person going back to school. I was in my late 30s, and then I was in my early 40s when I finished, especially sitting in person in class. But I found that there was, you know, quite a few of us that were, you know, late 30s and up going back to school, and I was able to, you know, get together with them. But I had a few of the younger people that I became close with as well. And regardless of the age group, I did notice that when certain practical situations come up, and I talk about real world things that I had to deal with, it didn't matter if they were 20 or 50. Had so much education, they would still look at me with that deer in the headlights and didn't know what I was talking about. And it just amazed me, and I was like, wow, you know, just to have someone look in your face and literally don't know what you're talking about. And they would have to ask questions. And I said to myself, doesn't anybody know these things? I mean, doesn't everybody know these things? But you'd be surprised. So, I mean, having a lot of education is great and everything, but I mean, there's certain practical things you have to deal with every single day. There are people you have to deal with every single day. And some of these people that are highly educated will purposefully just stick with their own group of people and stay in certain circles because they don't know how to relate to anybody else who did not come from the same background that they came from. But there's going to be a point in time where you're going to have to do that because the world is constantly moving, it's constantly changing, people are constantly moving around, and you don't know what a person's background is or where they came from. You're going to have to come across them at some point. So what are you going to do as far as your interpersonal relations with these people? What about business? Business is a big one because you can have someone who is highly educated open up a business, and when you're dealing with the public, you might have to go into negotiations. You might have to deal with suppliers or business partners. You don't know where this person came from. So if you don't have those communication skills where you could be able to work things out, then that could hit your bottom line as far as your profits. Or, you know, if you're in a social organization or belong to a church and you're dealing with the public and you have people that are coming in that want to be a part of the organization and everything. You know, you've got this and I call it imaginary caste system going on because it's not even a thing anymore. How are you going to be able to be an effective leader in these groups if you can't relate to some of the people that are in them. So, if you want to stay in your own little section and in your own little bubble, just make sure you do it 24/7, because eventually you're going to have to go outside that bubble and you got to deal with some regular people. And if you don't have those skills, then you're not going to be able to, be effective in whatever task you're trying to accomplish. And don't get it twisted. Just because somebody doesn't have as many letters behind their name as you do, that doesn't mean they're stupid. As a matter of fact, they can smell you coming. There are some people that'll target you because they already know that you don't have the wherewithal to handle basic things, and they'll take advantage of you. Take advantage of your money, take advantage of your relationships with people. Take advantage. So, and that goes back to the different levels of intelligence that I talked about. I'm going to go ahead and, polish up on my research in regard to that. And I'm going to provide that to you because I think once I give that information to you about the different types of intelligence, then I think there's going to be a little less strife and less of a communication divide between people, because a lot of people are having trouble communicating because you got one that think they're smarter than the other. And their assumptions are totally, there's no basis for their assumptions at all. It's all rooted in hate. And that's the bottom line. So I'm going to go ahead and, get to work on that and give you that in a later audio. But I just wanted to put that out there. It's good to have an education, don't get me wrong. But don't be an educated fool. Because there are other things in this world that you're going to have to look into and work through that's not in a textbook. It's not in a textbook. It's not in a lecture. It's not in a seminar. So you're going to have to just expand your mind and understand that so you could be successful and be able to navigate your way in this world, because you don't know how long you're going to be here. Just saying.